Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about something that is really important to me and something that I truly believe in, and that is investing as a fresh graduate or an existing university student. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. We're going to talk about what is investing, why you should get started at a relatively young age, the few differences between investing and saving, and what is right for you. What else? Oh, we're going to talk about getting started as an investor here in Canada or in the States. And we're also going to talk about getting into the mindset of an investor. So if this is something that interests you, stay around, stay tuned, I guess. Let's get started. So a quick search on Google, Instagram, YouTube, even TikTok for that matter, or if you're still a fossil, then even Internet Explorer will give you hundreds of results, if not thousands, about what investing is, about how it's an allocation of resources, how it has made people millions and billions, and how they retired early, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. But none of that for me. You know what? We don't do this here. Investing for me is simply the act of freeing up my resources and time in the future by making extremely intentional decisions about how I spend my finite resources today. And that's it. That's literally what investing is for me. So, like a lot of people, I graduated university not exactly knowing what I want out of my career or where I wanted to go. Sure, I'm good in accounting, so I went ahead and got a degree in accounting, and my current goal, my professional career is going to be in accounting for the foreseeable future, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to be in accounting for the rest of my life. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I just don't know yet, right? So investing for me equates to freedom, the freedom of deciding where I want to take my career and what I want to do in the future without, having to think about affording the basic necessities of life, for example. Like if I want to make a decision tomorrow about what I want to do, I want to be able to make those decisions without thinking about, how am I gonna pay for rent tomorrow, or what am I gonna eat tomorrow? These little decisions you think you might think that aren't a big deal, but when it comes down to it, these are the things that hold so many people back from choosing to do things that they want to do. And so investing for me equates to freedom, the freedom of making these choices. So I guess the question naturally becomes, why should you invest now in your 20s as a fresh graduate or a university student when money's tight, instead of say in your 40s when you're a lot more richer, hopefully, because we all want to be rich, and you can afford to invest? Well, the answer is simply because of something called compounding interest, where small incremental returns in the present become huge payouts in the long run. Let me explain what that means. So imagine that your money is a little snowball at the top of a hill, and over time this snowball is rolling down and it's accumulating more and more snow. And what you find is that at the end of the hill, or the foot of the hill, that little snowball is much bigger now in size. And this is something called the snowball effect, where small incremental returns, again, just become huge payouts, and it kind of exponentially starts increasing. And at the end of, say, whatever long you invest for, you get a much bigger sum than you would have had you invested a lot later. So for example, say that you're a broke college student in your 20s and you want to retire by 40, and you can only afford to invest $100 up front, and you can only make $20 contributions a month. At the end of 40 years, given that your investments have an average return of 7%, you're going to have $55,000 in your bank. Now, in another instance, imagine that you're in your 40s, you haven't invested a single dollar yet, but you want $55,000 for your retirement. For you to achieve the same amount of money, you would need to invest $105 a month for the next 20 years to receive the same amount. See, the problem is you'd have to invest 5 times as much in scenario B compared to scenario A when you started in your 40s and not your 20s. And this doesn't even take into consideration the fact that as you get older, you have more experience and you can demand and earn more wages. And that is why compounding is so effective, especially when you start early. So I guess the next question that most people ask is investing the same as savings, putting money away in a bank and not touching it for the foreseeable future? And while they have their similarities and uses, they are different in a number of ways, with the biggest being the rate of return that you receive from your savings account versus your investments. So, for example, you go to any of the major banks in Canada, and if you want to open up a high yield savings account, the average return you'll get or average interest you'll receive is around 1.8 or 1.9%. But the problem is, this does not take into consideration the effect of inflation that corrodes away your money. So, for example, in 2019, the inflation rate was around 1.95%. In 2018, it was 2.27%. And what that means is that if you put your money in a savings account that gives you an interest rate that is below the rate of inflation, over a 20-year period, you're going to end up with less money than what you actually put in your savings account. And that is why investments for me have an edge. But that doesn't necessarily mean that savings accounts are horrible and they should be cancelled, because cancel culture. No, I'm kidding. Savings accounts have their own uses. For example, if you need money really quickly, or if you're saving up for something that you want to purchase in the near future, then saving accounts are really useful because they help retain the amount of value of your money. But for the long run, for say a period of 20 years or 40 years, saving accounts aren't it. And let me show you why exactly. So say for example you have $10,000 in a savings account, a high yield savings account, at an annual rate of 2.1%, while the inflation rate over the same period is 2.5%. At the end of those 20 years, you're going to come out with a total of $9,248, which is literally less than what you put in at the beginning of those 20 years. And now say that you have another $10,000 lying around and you invest this money at an average rate of 7%. At the end of these 20 years, you're going to come out with $23,616. So hopefully at this point, you're kind of warming up to the entire concept of investing, and in order to build a future that is prosperous and wealthy, you kind of need to buy in to this idea, and you need to start as soon as you can. So the next piece of this puzzle is, Broby, how exactly do I start investing? What do I put my money in, and what should I buy? And the answer to that is pretty simple. So if we break it down into the basics or the fundamentals, there are actually multiple ways in which you can start investing. So for example, you could save up for a down payment and go buy a house, or you could start your own business. And the third option, which I prefer and also recommend for most people, especially beginners, is investing in the stock market. And here are 3 big reasons why you should invest in the stock market, especially when you're starting off. The first being, investing in the stock market is extremely accessible, especially when you're starting off. In another example, imagine that you wanted to go out and buy a house, especially in a city as expensive as Toronto. Not only would you need to save up for a sizable down payment, but the costs of maintaining the house, property taxes, as well as mortgage payments just simply add up. And if you think about it, you would need a considerable amount of money saved up already if you just wanted to go out and buy a house, compared to say investing in the stock market, where you can literally get started with as much as $50 and just invest up as you go forward. The second reason is that the money you invest in the stock market is usually available for withdrawal, especially if you find yourself in a pinch. Now sure, the amount that you can withdraw will differ depending on how the market is performing at a given day or how your portfolio is performing, but it's still a lot more accessible compared to say selling off your house or selling off your business at a given day, especially when you need the money as soon as possible or right now. So I guess this smoothly brings us into our next topic, which is what is passive investing and why you should do it when you're starting off. So passive investing is basically when you buy ETFs or exchange traded funds and you hold them for the long run with expectations of future profits. So for context, what are ETFs? Well, the easiest way to think about it is that imagine that you have a basket, and in your basket there is a small percentage share of every single company that are enlisted in a stock market. So for example, if an ETF is tracking the TSX or the Toronto Stock Exchange, the ETF will pretty much have every single stock that are traded in the TSX based on their market cap. So for example, the biggest companies will have the biggest percentage share in the ETF, and the smaller companies will have smaller percentages. So a key benefit of investing with ETFs is the diversity that provides. So for example, that you own an ETF and the ETF pretty much tracks a lot of firms or a lot of companies in the market. And if a specific company does bad at a given day, but the entire market does well, that means that the poor performance or the negative returns from that specific company stock will be offset by the positive returns made by all other companies in the stock exchange. And as a result, you always come out ahead. Another benefit is that you don't really need to do a lot of research when you invest in ETFs. So for example, if you were investing in a company, you would need to know what their PE ratios are, does the company provide dividends, what their future potential is. But with ETF investing, it's really hands-off in the sense that because you're investing in the whole market, if the market does well, so will you. And that is why ETF trading is so good, especially when you are a beginner. So at this point, you are ready to invest, you want to build a future that is wealthy and prosperous, hopefully, and because your boy hyped you up, you just want to get started as soon as you can. Well, the question becomes now, Barobi, how do I get started with ETF investing or whatever, So especially if you are situated in the States or Canada, the easiest way to get started is through the use of robo-advisors or budget online brokerages. So, in the States, you have your Principal, you have your Webull, as well as the infamous Robinhood that every retail investor seems to hate on now. In Canada, it's a little more, your choices are a little more restricted, but the one that I recommend and use personally is Wealthsimple. And the reason why I recommend using Wealthsimple is because of how intuitive and simple it makes the entire process. It kind of takes away the guesswork from investing. And what they essentially do is that they take your preferences into account. So what your risk rates are, or how much risk you can take. If you have specific preferences, such as you want to only invest in halal companies, or if you only want to invest in sustainable companies, they take those into account as well. And they pretty much set up an investing portfolio for you consisting of multiple ETFs. So not only do you enjoy the benefits of one ETF, but you also enjoy the benefits of having a portfolio that consists of multiple ETFs. And what you essentially do is that you basically give them money either one time, or you give them money on a monthly basis, and they pretty much buy up ETFs for you, and hopefully you hold them for the long run and see growth. Another benefit of using Wealthsimple is that there isn't exactly a limit on how much you can invest starting off. I always seem to get a question that, oh, Barobi, like, how do I start investing? And more importantly, how much do I invest in? Like, do I put in all my savings, or do I just start off with a little amount? And what I say is that invest as much as you are comfortable with investing. So basically, even if you have, say, $100 or $50, just start with it. Make yourself feel comfortable about the entire process and how Wealthsimple's intuitive platform works, and then when you feel more comfortable, you can set up monthly deposits, or you can invest big amounts in one go, up to your preference. But initially, you can start off with as little as $100 or $50, and you slowly build from there. Personally, I started with around $550, and I set up auto deposit, and I pretty much invest on a monthly basis. And whenever I get a grant or something from my university, I usually put that amount towards my investments. So I just want to leave off or end this video with a little bit of the investing mindset that you kind of need to get into before you start. Well, obviously, as young graduates or students, it's really hard to have money that you can spare, especially, given how expensive Toronto is as a city, for example. But I genuinely believe that getting into a habit of investing is really, really helpful in growing it. And I just want to leave you with two tips. The first one being that instead of thinking of investing as an afterthought, think about it as an expense, something that you basically need to pay off at the beginning of every month. And essentially what that allows you to do is build up that portfolio over time. And the mindset really allows you to be, really strict with yourself and be really disciplined. The second investment mindset tip that I want to leave you with is that everything that you do is about balance, and it's really important to balance both your future and your present. Well, there are a lot of YouTubers out there, really big ones, who suggest really extreme ways on how to save money now so that you can, have a really big, prosperous future in the future. But I think that balancing is really key when it comes to finding fulfillment in life in every aspect, including the way you handle your money. So, for example, I usually use a budgeting system. So, when I used to go to university, I used to spend around $350 per month on food, or that was my budget. And what I essentially did was that if I spent more than $15 in, say, the first day, then I would cut back down and spend $10 for the next 3 or 4 days, so that it eventually balances up at the end of the month. And what that allows you to do is enjoy the little things in life, going out with friends, eating a good meal, or just, treating yourself. But at the same time, it also means that you aren't ever going to go over budget. And having that thought at the back of your head really helps in basically reining in on all of your expenses. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a really long one. There was a lot of things that happened in between, with me changing my camera and a lot and whatnot. But I really hope you like this video. I really appreciate all the support, and thank you so much. I will see you guys in the next one. Have fun. Bye.